Hello, my name's Roy Jenkins. This is my political party, Get Snouts Out the Truck Party. It was registered in 2006 at the Electoral Commission in London. I've been campaigning since 1990 against fraud, corruption, perverting the course of justice, etc. As we see, this was an 1860 note where they call the quackerwodger was a type of a wooden politician who acted on the instructions of an influential third party. I'll just go through a few details, a few pages. I won't do many because we will be doing a longer one later, a longer video later. First of all, this is a letter I received from the Metropolitan Police when I complained. They accused me, the Metropolitan Commissioner accused me of not sending documents, so I don't know how to prove that he'd actually received them. When you see this letter, it shows quite clearly that there's no email number, no fax number, no phone number, no reference number for me to contact. He then accused me of trying to smear people's names. They did receive the parcel. They did read all the documents I'd sent in. They filed them and recorded them, but unfortunately they'd all disappeared. When I asked for the file number or the recording number, they couldn't find that either. So this is one of the things that when we're saying to people, if you've had the same sort of problems, please get in touch with us, because we want to get as many people together as we can to take things forward. Doing this on your own simply doesn't work. If you haven't got a lot of people together, then you're not going anywhere. But with a lot of, if I can get people to come in with us, just write to what's on the first page, we can put everything together. We need 150,000 people to sign a petition. Then, by law, the House of Commons has to read the paper out. So if we can all get together, we've got a good chance. Nobody's asking for money. If you want to join the party or whatever, simply send an email. This here is 2 tapes. In 2000, on January 18, 2000, I made a 2-taped portion statement to Cannock Police Station. On that statement, I spoke about the fraud by Bradford and Bingley Bank, judges, police, etc. This package was opened on the 9th of March 2020, so we gave it 20 years. People have asked, why do you wait 20 years? Well, it means we've been able to prove the lies that have been and the cover-ups that have gone on in that time. But now those 2 tapes are now ready to be transcribed, and then we'll hear what actually was said. This is a judgment that was given to me by District Judge Isley, in which he stated I'd won my case against West Midlands Police. They'd failed to provide any evidence. They raised to the court, and then they claimed that it was never given to them. They never received the judgment. Well, we know they did, because the court at Stafford also said they'd sent it to them. This is one of the things that I've been fighting, tax evasion. This is taken from a tape that I made of a corrupt customs officer. We also did 4 tapes of corrupt police officers. On this tape, on this letter, it clearly shows he's saying that tax evasion is rife within the commercial sector. He also explains how these false invoices are drawn up and used. I know how they were being used. I was forced to use them, but that will go on next time. Okay. This part is about where I try to have arrest warrants issued against chief constables and CEOs at the Bradford and Bingley. I requested they be issued on the 8th of August in 2010. When you read the bottom part, the only person that can deal with an arrest warrant application is a magistrate, where once you put the documents in court, You then have to go into the court before the magistrate and swear on oath that everything that's in the file is true. Otherwise, you're obviously in trouble if you're telling lies. This was a judgment made by District Judge Wickham. A district judge has no right at all to deal with arrest warrant applications. When you see the judgments, you'll see at the top that it says Judiciary of England and Wales. It doesn't say City of Westminster Magistrates Court. There is no court reference number, which there has to be. There is no case reference number, which has to be. And then on there it clearly states that I wanted arrest warrants issued against Chief Constable Swift, Chief Constable Sim, Paul Jordan, Head of Legal Services for the Bradford and Bingley, Stephen Crawshaw, CEO of the Bradford and Bingley, Richard Pym, he's CEO of the Bradford and Bingley, and Alistair Darling, who is the Minister for the Finance. On the back page again of her judgments, signs it as Daphne Wickham, she's a district judge. No, we have letters from the court saying the only people that can actually deal with an arrest warrant is the City of Westminster Magistrates Court. This is an email I received from Mr. Justice Bean. I made an application for an appeal, and on this appeal he's written, "This is a vexatious judicial review claim as I've ever seen." Well, we did write him a polite letter, 3 pages long, asking him to explain where I've been vexatious, which he refuses to reply to. We knew that he wasn't going to do that. This is a letter to Staffordshire Police Force. In this letter, I'd asked them to provide me with the case number and the court number for the arrest warrant application I made. The paperwork was sent to their barrister, but they're saying in here no such number exists at Staffordshire Police Force of a case number or a reference number to the hearing. So it was just somebody did it, throw it out and bamboozle him. Okay. For people who've lost their homes, this is what we were fighting about earlier. This here is a page from Lord Justice Ward's judgment when I appeared before him. He says at the top, he cannot understand costs of £15,000 to £16,000 for a simple hearing, but they did go up more after that. Also, we provided Lord Justice Ward with paperwork showing that though the Bradford and Bingley and their barrister had claimed in court that the day before the hearing in May of 2000, they recredited to my account 2 sums of money. Lord Justice Ward mentions here a total sum of £1,361.18 has been credited to Jenkins' account, and that the further sum of £1,488 has been credited to the account on the day before the hearing, before the district judge. And then on paragraph 32, Lord Justice Ward says, these figures do not appear on official communications from the Building Society placed before me, and that is a matter which needs to be investigated. He referred me to the Ombudsman or to the police. Unfortunately, the Ombudsman has lost all the paperwork, not once but twice. The police say it's not a police matter, yet it is. If somebody signs a false statement of truth and enters them into court, they can go to jail for up to 10 years at a time. We were ordered to pay, we were told we had arrears of nearly £5,000. We contacted the official Building Society's Ombudsman, Mr. Murphy. At the bottom he confirms that he found the Building Society was guilty of maladministration. But the thing that we found out that was amazing about it, the person that sits on Mr. Murphy's panel and also on the new financial ombudsman is a Mr. McGuinness. Mr. McGuinness is the General Secretary of the Bradford and Bingley, and he advises Mr. Murphy and the other gentleman, the new ombudsman, how to deal with complaints about his own building society. It's completely against the rules of the financial ombudsman, but rules don't count. When you're talking banks, they count for nothing. So if you've lost your homes, we understand that there's over 3 million homes being repossessed, and when we come out of this virus 19, the banks are already hiring hundreds of bailiffs ready to start snatching back homes, flats, whatever. This was drawn up by an accountant, and we were showing a second, but he's showing that 1997 our credit was 193, 98 £31 arrears, 99 credit of £81.68. When I read the statement of truth made by Paul Jordan, who was the head of legal services for the Bradford and Bingley, that's the date, that's his signature. When we're talking about these documents, if you're in a civil court, they would say the time is up. But documents that have knowingly been signed that are false to gain money by fraudulent means, it's a criminal act. Criminal acts don't have any time limits. But this is, well, you see, Bradford and Bingley, Jenkins versus Bradford and Bingley. When I go on to the second page, you'll have to excuse me that I've done this before, so when we go on really. Now here is paragraph 4. This is part of Paul Jordan, Head of Legal Services for the Bradford and Bingley. He signed this statement of truth. And he says even if such monies were refunded to the claimants, there would still be substantial arrears of payments. We found out from watching the various building societies, that when they talk about substantial arrears, they start at £8,000 upwards. So the day he made this statement and signed this statement of truth and entered it into Stafford Court, he's telling the court we had substantial arrears from £8,000 plus. When we spoke to the judge, I won't say too much about the judge because I don't want it to matter too much. This is a letter that I received from Paul Jordan after the hearing, and he states quite clearly, I can confirm for the avoidance of doubt that on the 31st of October 1999 your arrears balance stood at £51.89 in arrears. So a bit different to £8,000 to £10,000 which he claimed in his statement of truth that we had. But the other thing, if people who've lost homes, this is going back before 2000, but if you can still find your statements, your mortgage statements, if you look on there, at the bottom it will say additional interest, and that additional interest is a fine. It's not interest, they're fining you. So if you have missed a payment by a week, they will fine you for doing that. We've got several of these. I mean, there's too many to go on with for now. But again, this is what we're asking people. If you've had these problems, just get in touch with us. We've already putting stuff forward all the time anyway. Going back to this £51.89, I actually found the finance units at the Bradford and Bingley, and I was asking him, can you tell me what this additional interest means? And then he just burst out laughing, and I asked him, no, tell me what the additional interest means in financial terms. What is it for? And then they explained the same thing. If you're in arrears of any sort, we will charge you additional interest. Well, mine came to nearly £3,000 over a few years. So if you've lost your home and you can find your own mortgage statements, go back and have a look, because they could amount to thousands of pounds. We were told in 94, I think it was, or 95, we had £5,000 in arrears. Now bear in mind, we only took the mortgage out in 92, I think it was. So in 95, suddenly we got £5,000 in arrears. Unfortunately, I was out of the country because I drove all around Europe. My father-in-law went to Bradford and Bingley and paid the amount. And from that day to this day, Bradford and Bingley simply refused to send any documentation showing where we had £5,000 arrears. And they refused to return the money. They claimed in the phone that when they paid two sums of money back to my account on the 4th of May 1999, that was the day before the actual hearing on May the 5th. They also claimed they backdated one sum of the money back to December 1999, and they paid another sum of £1,500, just under £1,400, on the 4th of May, the day before the hearing. None of those sums of money have appeared on any of our statements, our year-end mortgage statements, from 1999 up until we paid the mortgage off. HHJ Rubery actually ordered the Bradford and Bingley, this is his court order, which he issued in Stoke-on-Trent County Court, read the appeal. The bundle is to be agreed between Mr Jenkins and the Bradford and Bingley, and to be paginated and forwarded to the judge, the evidence of the two transactions to my account in the days and the months they mentioned. Bradford and Bingley received that. They just simply refused to reply. When I got to court, I pointed out I wanted the hearing to be held under oath, which he wouldn't allow. Rubery wouldn't allow that. Same when I appeared before HHJ Perrott, they came out with the same. I've been to the police, I've given them all the evidence. We've been to the corporation fraud unit of the police. They claim they went to the Bradford and Bingley. They were shown the financial record showing these two credits have been made to our account. Yet, when we asked under the Freedom of Information Act for the police to provide us with the information showing they'd been to the Bradford and Bingley and confirming in writing that they'd seen these transactions, they simply refused to reply to them. When I went to the police, this is in 2005, the Chief Constable through his Chief Inspector states, A, the making of a full statement of truth by Mr Jordan of the Bradford and Bingley Building Society, in my opinion, the documentation does not provide sufficient evidence to support any criminal proceedings against Mr Jordan. Well, I'll show you later documents which show that there are court orders, court laws. He should have been dealt with, he should have been charged, because he admitted in the one letter I read out that actually we didn't have a substantial arrears on the day he signed his statement of truth. We only had arrears of £51 plus. His excuse was, when he wrote a letter, he said that he didn't write the statement of truth. One of his staff wrote the statement of truth and he simply signed it. Well, I've been told by judges, if you sign something without reading the small print, then it's your problem. It doesn't belong to anybody else. If you signed it, as Jordan did, then he knowingly signed a false documentation, false statement of truth, which can carry a jail sentence up to 10 years, which will explain why we've never been able to get proper justice from police or Prime Minister, anyone. As I say, I've read out these are the mortgage statements, which shows what the additional interest is. When I found their financial office or legal office, they just laughed at me when I asked, what does additional interest mean? And eventually he told me it's fining. If you miss a week or you're a week late, they can fine you for being a week late. They don't even have to. They do now. They changed the law in 2000. I wrote to several mortgage companies and I asked them all, what do you consider to be substantial arrears? Everyone comes up with the same version. £8,000-10,000 is the normal. So if you've got £8,000 arrears, you're in substantial arrears. But everywhere we've gone, it's done whether it's the police, the building society's ombudsman, the financial ombudsman. We've been to police, judges. Judges have the right. When I asked Lord Justice Ward, I said, will you bring the police in? Because I explained to him and gave him paperwork of the problems we were having with the police. And he said he wasn't allowed to do it. But later in his judgment, he actually says a judge is allowed to bring in the police if he thinks criminal acts have been committed. Because, as we found out over the years, a lot of judges have money or shares in building societies, banks. They're not going to go against their own. But I'd like to, just so we get everything right, everything I say and everything I produce is there. It isn't just my words, it's the words of the people that send me letters. So if we ask a question and they reply, we're asking them, you tell us the truth. If they've lied, we've now found out how they do lie, and they lie for one another. In actual fact, I had one judge tell me in the Royal Courts of Justice while I was waiting to go in, no judge will find another judge guilty of making a wrong decision or judgment. So you're beating your head against a brick wall. These things happen, believe me. We've done it more than once. This is a letter we wrote to Mr. Justice Bean, to the Administrative Court Office at the Royal Courts of Justice. He called my application the most vexatious that he's seen. Well, all this is a polite letter. Nowhere in there that we said anything wrong. We've asked him simply to give us, in there we've asked for statutes, laws, and to show a judge is allowed to enter into secret conversation with the defendants without actually sending us a copy. District Judge Wickham wrote to the Bradford and Bingley. They wrote to the CEOs. They wrote to the police. No records of her letters exist anywhere. As I've said in the earlier letter, they were received from Stafford Police. They confirmed quite categorically we have no case number and we have no case reference number for the court hearing before Wickham. And funny enough, I've just been looking there this morning, and that was when I suddenly realised that Judge Wickham hasn't used City of Westminster paper, Magistrate Court paper. It's like a John Bull sit. It looks to me. It's not a proper court paper, which is what we're bringing up now. Through the years, as I say, we've tried many times. I don't think there's anywhere we haven't been. I went to the Bar Council, and the Bar Council wrote back, and they stated there's obviously something very wrong, but the barrister, Mr. Jackson, who acted for the Bradford and Bingley, could only put to a judge what the Bradford and Bingley solicitor had given him. So when I said they'd lied in their paperwork to the barrister, the Bar Council didn't argue. But they say we can only deal with the barrister, and we can't find against the barrister because he's been given the paperwork by the solicitor for the Bradford and Bingley, who's researched it and handed it to him. So when he was in court before Rubery in 2005, I said to Rubery, you issued a court order that they were to provide the copies off their financial record showing that they had repaid these two credits to our account. And I held the documents up, I've just held there, and all Ruby did went, I don't want to talk about that now. That's in his judgment we've got there, but he doesn't want to talk about it. He's not going there. Not going down that road again was his words. So when you go before the other thing that you find, which we found, we were litigants in person. When we first went to court in 1999, I was a litigant in person. So I'd gone to the court and I'd asked them to explain exactly what I needed to do. They gave me the forms. In the forms it states 7 days before the hearing date, everything you want to use in court, you must provide the judge with and the other side with. Otherwise, it can't be heard. Well, when we walked into court before District Judge Isley, the Bradford and Bingley, the solicitors and the barrister, as we entered into the court and sat down, he gave me a brown folder and he said, read this. We found out later what should have happened. When he gave the copies to District Judge Isley, she should have asked us, as we wouldn't know or we didn't know, do you want these documents to be allowed to be heard? Do you want a recession so you can read the documents? Or if you don't want them at all, you don't have to allow them to be entered. Well, we said we didn't want them to be allowed to be entered, but that went by. When she opened her envelope, inside was 32 pages, and all they were 32 pages of figures, one after the other. We had no chance of even looking at. We wouldn't know what they were. It would have taken us weeks to try to find out. But we've kept the documents, so we have all the documents as evidence. But then we found out afterwards the judge was obliged by law to ask us the very same question. Do you want them entered? Do you want them refused? Do you want to cancel the hearing for today? I said no, we didn't want them being entered, but it didn't make any difference. Then, if it seems complicated, it's not that complicated, it's just going. I made an appeal to Stafford Court, and it was an appellant's hearing. So the only person that could be there was me. The other side could be there, but they couldn't say anything or do anything. It was strictly on what I put forward, what I asked the judge, what the judge asked me. Funny enough, it was H.A.J. Rubery. The day before this hearing, I received a message from Stafford Court telling me that my hearing had been adjourned. I asked why has it been adjourned? I haven't adjourned it. Oh no, the Bradford and Bingley wrote to the judge asking it be adjourned because they hadn't had time to put their paperwork in. As I just explained, Stafford Court explaining letters, it's your paperwork and your paperwork only. Not only did Bradford and Bingley apply for and get from Rubery an adjournment, they put in costs for £4,000 for the hearing they couldn't even be at. So they couldn't claim costs for my hearing. But the judge, when I explained it to the judge later, they just shrugged it off like, well, those things happen. When we appeared before H.A. Rubery the last time, I was querying the cost, and Rubery picked the costs up from the Bradford and Bingley, and that suddenly said to them, why are you charging London costs for solicitors and barristers for a Staffordshire court? It's not, you can't do that. There's two sets of, each court's varying in court has different costs that you can claim. So we did alter that. They didn't repossess the house. I told Judge Rubery that I was going forward. I was going to the Royal Courts of Justice. So he just turned around and said, put it up for sale. When it's sold, sort out the costs. But what you've got to do, that's it. That was when we went before Lord Justice Ward. When I appealed, I was put before Lord Justice Richards and Mr. Justice Madison at the courts in London. I got to the courts at 2:05. When I entered the court, 2:05, and as they were talking, I realised they were giving me wrong dates, and the Madison was looking over, and then he wanted to know what I was writing. And I said, well, you're giving me wrong dates, you're giving me wrong years, who said what, all that's wrong. They both stood up, went to the chambers, they were in there for 4 or 5 minutes, came back out, they got a several-page judgment, which they read out, telling me why I was wrong, and the Bradford Bingley was right. And then they got up, walked out the court. That was 2:25. So in 20 minutes, all that had been done. The judgment had been written before they got into court. It was there waiting. All I needed to do was walk in the chambers, come back out, there's a paper. Again, all the judgments, when they give you a judgment, such as Madison and Richards did, they put the time you enter court and the time you leave court. So when I say I went in at 2:05 and I was back out at 2:25, it's there on record. Nobody can say, well, they couldn't have done it that quick. My hearing wasn't to be heard. It was as simple as that. They didn't want it to be heard, which is why they wanted to cover up for District Judge Wickham. Again, I'll explain. District judges are not allowed to deal with matters of arrest warrant appeals. The only person who can do that is an actual magistrate. But District Judge Wickham was sent to Bradford to deal with the judge and his wife, who had both admitted they perverted the course of justice, which is a serious offence. When Wickham got there, he slapped them both on the wrist and then told them don't do it again. Then she was given a job on the Immigration Appeals panel by Cameron, which was a nice little earner for her, and she was out of the court. I'd written to Cameron several times. If you go to Google or whichever, look through the records, when they were closing the Bradford and Bingley down because there was so much financial corruption, I believe it was between 500 and 800 million pounds of shareholders' money vanished. Nobody could find it. Cameron appointed Mr. Richard Banks to be the person to deal with the shareholders. And if I remember right, he offered them something like 10 pence in the pound. So people who've saved all their life for the pension just lost everything. And then Richards went from being the person dealing with the shareholders, he was made the CEO of the Bradford and Bingley by Cameron. And then he was on, I think it was 1.8 million a year, plus expenses and a golden handshake. So I would ask anybody that's had these problems with building societies, or you feel your home's been repossessed illegally, please get in touch on the number on the poster, so we can go forward. I have already written to Boris Johnson since November, sending him various documents and asking him why he hasn't acted, or that the Prime Minister before haven't acted. They are criminal acts. They know exactly what they've done. When they've signed false papers, they know they've signed false papers, and they've used them in court, which they know is illegal. It's taken me a long time to find the various laws out, simply because nobody wants to tell you. If you ask under the Freedom of Information Act, there's always some vague reply. The police haven't been at any help whatsoever, but I was informed that allegedly, I will say allegedly, I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but certain police officers are allowed to buy homes that have been repossessed by building societies at a fraction of the value that they actually are. I can only assume this, again, is allegedly, that the police turn a blind eye. I know from my own paperwork here, the police do turn a blind eye. They don't want those questions. They don't want to arrest anyone with anything to do with a building society or a bank. If you look in Iceland, I can't remember the exact amount, they arrested loads of bankers. They arrested them, they jailed them, repossessed all their assets, and they banned them from working at banks again. They've done the same in Spain, they've done the same in Germany, as I understand. In England, if you complain about a banker and that he's committed fraud, our government knights them. Did you say, hang on, Fred the Shred, who was with the Royal Bank of Scotland, he was knighted. And look at the billions of pounds that was lost by the Bank of Scotland. Okay, this is a part dealing with the DWP. Most people know with the pension companies, elderly people are treated horribly. This was an article written by Cameron just before the general election of 2010, and he's talking about the Tories, and he says, "We will always look after the needy, the disadvantaged, the elderly, the frail and the poorest of our country. That is the sort of person I am, David Cameron." Well, if you go through his record in dealing with pensions and people on benefits, it's worse than a third world country, the way he's dealt with it. This is a court case that I attended for an elderly relative at Walsall Courts. The DWP at Lichfield had been to a house and they told her they were taking away parts of a pension or parts of her benefits. Then they said they wanted to destroy every letter they'd ever sent her. There was approximately an 80-page statement that Duncan Smith's crew issued to Walsall Courts. They accused this 90-year-old woman of moving in a new partner after her husband had died. They accused her of deliberately defrauding the state and hiding documents that she shouldn't have hid. We got to the court on the 25th of December 2012. I was asked by the usher, "Do you have any further documents?" And I said, yes, I've got a copy of a letter from 2006. So I gave a copy for the judge and I gave a copy for the solicitors, barristers for the DWP. Now the DWP and Duncan Smith had said these letters that I was presenting simply didn't exist. Nobody knew anything about it. So I handed these letters to the usher. She gave one to the judge's chambers and she handed one to the barrister solicitors of the DWP. After several minutes of looking at, the DWP actually ran out of the court because everything they'd put in their statement of truth was shown to be nothing but a pack of lies. The judge found for this relative and he said even if the DWP comes back again, he will throw that claim out as well. It wouldn't be heard in his court again. These are our people who old age, because like with a lot of old age pensioners, we don't really understand what goes on. So if it comes to money or they take some of it, you don't really know what they're doing and they don't really explain it to you. This recently was a letter from Staffordshire Council. In this letter, they're threatening this relative who is now not, she's 98 this year, or was. They're telling her here that if she doesn't contact them within the next 7 days to say how she's going to pay these bills that she owes, they're going to send in the bailiffs to repossess any possessions she had. You will be able to read this on the site later, but that's what they're saying. I now have to advise you that unless payment is received within the next 7 days or you contact us to discuss this issue, proceedings to recover this debt will commence and will include legal action. One of the bills was for £441 for home care. Bear in mind, she's 98. She was 98 years old. This finished it all. One of the things that helped to finish it all. She was 98. She's registered blind and she couldn't hear properly. And they come in and said she owed 3 bills. So when I contacted the Staffordshire Council, they accused me of shouting when I wasn't. I was just asking questions I wanted answering. Then I said, hang on, when was this money owed from? And they said November 2019 to January or February of 2019. So I checked, while she was talking, I checked the records, and she'd actually been in hospital for those 3 months. She wasn't at the home, she wasn't at home, she wasn't at the home care place. Then it suddenly, when I said I want proof of what you're saying, she doesn't owe this money. I think it was just under £700. Then they went away. When they came back, this was in January this year, or February this year, they came back and said, we're sorry. When we sent the letter out, the address we sent it to, the gentleman there sent it straight back to us in November, telling us that no one of that name lived there, and he also sent the letter back to the council that they sent out. And they never do anything until we got this letter in 29th of January 2020. So when we were talking, then it turns out she didn't owe the money. But if we hadn't been there to protect her, then she would have paid. She was the sort of person that didn't like owing money. So if a bill come in today, which was not to be paid for another 2 months, she would pay to get it out of the way. We've been told that she overpaid £4,000 at the home. We don't know for sure yet, because the home said one thing, Stafford Council have said another. But this is happening to your parents, your grandparents. They're getting these letters, they're being fleeced, they're being robbed, and they don't know that they are being robbed. We've had several people come on saying their parent, the one woman was away on holiday. When she came back, there are secret courts throughout the UK that can only be used by the DWP, the Pension Service, or the NHS, or like Staffordshire Council. They can go to that court, they can tell the judge the person has got dementia or too ill or whatever. They can take the home, they can take all the money they've got in the bank, they can sell all the furniture, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. The only way we found out about it was a woman came home from her holiday, went to see her mother. When she got there, all the doors were locked, all the furniture had gone, and all the money in the bank had gone. Luckily, she was you sign a document where you can act for your parents and they can't dispute it. So I can't remember the name, but anyway, we'd signed one of those, so we knew that they couldn't take the money off her or do anything. But this is how they abuse the system. When we went to court and we were asking, well, why did they come and tell us that she owed £3,000? When they came into the house to see her, the chap, it was just like getting the Gestapo or the KGB. He sat down at the table and he didn't say words of what was going on. He just said, you have been overpaid by nearly £3,000. We want the £3,000 back. If you haven't got a cheque to give me, I will stay here in the house while you go to the bank, collect the £3,000 and bring it back here. He was told to clear it off, told to go away. She did know it, and she wasn't going to pay. That's when this District Judge Barry at Walsall Court, he just dismissed their claim completely. They'd filled in false statements of truth, they'd used false figures, and it's all come from the top, which was Duncan Smith, who was the Minister for the DWP. I've sent letters to, this was a letter to the Tribunal at Birmingham, asking for documents of proof. They refuse to send them. They tell me they don't exist. This is a letter from Burnley Pension Service. As promised, please find enclosed responses to Mike Taylor and Pat Moore. Unfortunately, Mike cannot recall anything about his visit, but surprisingly, Pat remembers the visits she made in 2007. Now, this Mike was the one that demanded payment. He wanted the cash, and he was going to wait to get the cash. until he was politely told to leave. Again, when you come back to older people who don't, this is an email that I received from the Burnley Pension Services. This was written by Pat Moore, the lady that came out. Her words were, "I remember this family very, very well. I don't recall having much to do with Mrs. Lemaitre. My first meeting may have been about appointee. What I remember clearly is that the son-in-law and his wife had many problems with all sorts of organisations, including their building society and the pension service. They were very open about everything, and I was aware that they were living with your customer after losing their eyes. Well, we didn't lose it, we were ordered to sell it. We did not distinguish ourselves. I took much evidence about capital and expenditure. The pension service lost the documents more than once, so I visited several times. The son-in-law made a complaint against the department, alleging everybody had it in for him. He had maintained that higher powers, he meant the government, were against him. Well, what I was against was the fact they came to my house, they took all the documents they asked for. Because of problems I've had in the past with the likes of Bradford and Bingham police, judges, I contacted the DWP in Lichfield and said, I would like you to send somebody out so every document we fill in is filled in properly and can't be said later that we filled it in wrong or we tried to defraud them. Obviously, when she first came, when Mrs. Moore first came, she took a statement from me that she signed and I signed. She took all the original documentation, bank statements, whatever, wouldn't accept any copies at all. They lost them. 6 weeks later, she came back, took the same stuff again. Then they came back again and she said, we've lost those as well. Well, that time I'd had enough and I said, go away, I'll get in touch with Duncan Smith, etc. As if that was going to do me any good. But you think these people are honest. They ain't honest, they don't care about you. This is a letter I sent to Duncan Smith, who was a pensions minister. I sent it to his constituency office. I gave him the court number, case number, whatever, and I asked him in the letter, do you get pleasure from terrorising 92-year-olds with court threats? Your legal office used full statements of truth, then deliberately withheld documentation requested from your Lichfield office. Every time we contacted your Lichfield office, they came back with the excuse, we can't find them on our computer records, we can't find them on our paper records. This is a normal thing. I have 50, 100 letters from various forces and government offices. Whenever you ask for a document, we've lost them. We can't find them. They don't exist. Then I'll get called Mr. Vexatious. That's the favourite name. This is the second one to Duncan Smith. But I've asked him again why, when the judge threw out his application, and I've asked for the documentation, and it says here 100,000 people died in a year. I believe the figure is through ATOS Actions. That was the one that was investigating before Smith come into it. But all these authorities are all based on the same thing. If they get caught out, they'll simply lie about it. They won't tell you the truth about it. They just come up with the words, oh, we can't find the documents. I've had it happen with the Met Commissioner, Soccer, Number 10, Police, Chief Constables. The list goes on and on. We've lost them. And yet I've had a lot of honest police officers help me out over the years. They call them all corrupt. They're not all corrupt. There's a lot of good police officers about, and some have come to me and told when I've been struggling to find something out, and I've come along and just, it's like a whisper in the air, look in this area, that's where you'll find what you're looking for. I sent documents to Blair when he was first made Prime Minister, sent him all the documents of the fraud, the corruption that was going on, and they wrote back to say, or his office wrote back to say they've been passed to the appropriate office. But if you're talking about police corruption or solicitors or bankers corruption, you go to the obvious ministries. Mine was sent to the Lord Chancellor's office, and the office told judges where they'd be sitting for the next 6 months. And the documents have been there for 2 years. Every time I wrote to Blair's office, number 10, all Blair said was they were the appropriate office. The personal private secretary to the Lord Chancellor was my MP, Dr. Tony Wright. And the documents I were giving him, he claimed was passed to Tony Wright, who passed them back to where Tony Wright was working. So it was a covered up. When I asked, we eventually found the documents, and I wrote a letter to the Lord Chancellor's office, and they came back and said, we don't know why Tony Blair, PM, sent these documents to us. They're nothing to do with us. But they'd left them sitting in a drawer for 2 years, gathering dust, until I actually found out from an honest person where they were. So whatever I say or whatever I say about the police, I don't include them all. There are lots of good police officers, and there's a lot of good police officers that have actually helped me out and customs officers have come forward and said, you're going about that the wrong way, to find that you're going about it the wrong way. They won't give you that, but go this way. When I contacted the parliamentary ombudsman, Mrs Abrams, the only way you can contact is you've got to go through your own MP. Well, at that time I didn't know Tony Wright was covering up for the police and for Blair. So that only came about when I found out years later he was the personal private secretary to the Lord Chancellor. So please don't put all police officers or customs officers in the same boat as the corrupt ones. With Mrs Abraham, when she sent me the file back about that thing, all the documentation, all the tapes and the records, they were just redacted. So you would see 2R Jenkins, but then everything else was all black, where everything had been redacted. That went on page after page. So every time I wrote back and said, this doesn't tell me anything, all you show me here is just black ink all over everything. We're not allowed for you to have it. But under the Freedom of Information Office, you're supposed to give it, mate. Back they come again. Under this, it's against the security system, so we can't give them you. So who are you covering up for? You're not covering up for me, you're obviously covering up for something else. All I'm asking people is, come on board with us, because at the end of the day, we need really to get justice for everybody. We're getting people who are on pensions, losing money, hundreds of thousands of deaths. I think it's 140,000 deaths now with the pension, 60 odd suicide caused by Duncan Wright's DWP. We've got people being killed in hospital. Pensioners not being looked after, they're being ripped off left, right and centre because people are going inside, they can't look after themselves without them in a home. And when home prices now, where my relative was, it was like £700 a month. That's what, £700, £800 a month. So the money doesn't go down. It doesn't last very long at all. All they kept asking her to sign a form, and they wanted to know, do you own your own home? Is it paid for? How much savings have you got? Or is it in your name? And then once she'd signed the document, they could go to what they wanted. They wanted to do it, and there was nothing she could do about it. But I do ask you to come on board. Any of the things we're talking about, all of this stuff is being put on the web page. There is some on there now, but I haven't put on any stuff on for a couple of years because I've simply been struggling trying to get information. They just will not give me the information that I want. I've tried through the Ministry of the Freedom of Information Office in Cheshire, get told the same thing. You can't get any off a Prime Minister. All your MPs now don't have to answer any freedom of information. Write to the police, they'll tell you, no, you can't have it because it's secrecy or whatever it may be. But this will also be going on the side. These are this R versus West London Justice ex parte Klan. These are rules and regulations. Now they're telling you a person to be treated for the purpose is a part of making a false instrument. If he alters an instrument as to make it false in any respect, whether or not it is false in some other respect apart from alteration. So if they make a statement of truth which is false, they can go to jail for up to 10 years. Making a genuine instrument false, which is I've said, they've made the false statements of truth, which is a criminal act. They go on about forgery. They give you the acts, but it's too long to do now. But they will be put on the side. This one is just page of it's called the EM 5106 penalties, culpability, Halsbury's Laws of England, fraud. And again, it quotes there 757 what constitutes fraud, making a false statement of truth, entering it into court to gain an illegal judgment. So with us, as I say, with what I'm doing now, I've opened it up more now because I have got further information which has been denied to me for several years. Now we've got it. I've got the tapes. Obviously, they didn't normally realise we kept the tape for 20 years. And the reason we kept it for 20 years without opening the envelope they were in or listening to them, we could collect all the lies that they've told us over the years. When I get letters from the police, etc., they always address me as vexatious. I've got letters from the courts, Royal Courts of Justice, Westminster Magistrate Court, I'm vexatious. But you ask the question, well, please show me where I'm vexatious. No one can. You just ask for the truth. I asked the Chief Constable of Staffordshire Police and West Midlands Police. I end all my letters to you, and have done for several years, as a statement of truth, which I sign and date, which means if I put anything in that letter that's false, as I was told by a police officer, your feet won't touch the floor on the way to jail. So we can be charged. You get a small family, got no money for food, they steal a loaf of bread, they go to jail, they get prosecuted. Our politicians go out there and they claim public money like it's their own, £6,000 have a moat cleaned, and they use it as their own funding, but they don't go to jail. They just get I forgot, I put it down wrong. No, they don't forget, they know exactly what they're doing. Now's the time to get rid of them now before they get so much of a hand on what we're doing. We won't have a life whatsoever. I'm doing this for my kids and my grandkids. For me, I'm too old to care. It doesn't matter to me. It ain't going to matter to me what happens now. But I do care passionately about this country and what's going on in it and what we're leaving for the future generations. I do hope you contact us. The letter, the email and everything's there. Thanks for your time. Hope to hear from you. Thank you.